All right, for our keynote speaker tonight, he is an author, lecturer, filmmaker. He has penned 12 books, including the Nephilim trilogy, which made the CBA bestseller list. He received an honorary doctorate from the series from his mentor, Dr. I.D.E. Thomas, who was the provost at Pacific International University. He was also honored with the Gold Medallion Award from Chuck Missler at the K House Conference in 2014. His series on the Trail of the Nephilim 1 and 2 are full-color, oversized books which uncover startling evidence that there was and has been a massive cover-up of what he believes are the remains of the Nephilim, or the giants mentioned in the Bible. He teamed up with filmmaker Richard Shaw to create the Watchers series. There are now 11 installments in the series, and Watchers 7, UFO Physical Evidence, won UFO Best Film and the People's Choice Awards at the UFO Congress in 2014. He and Shaw took their second trip to Peru in January of 2014, filming an ancient artifacts and megalithic structures at various locations, and also filmed the unwrapping of a 2,000-year-old mummy skull at Señor Juan Navarro Paracas History Museum, which was revealed in Watchers 8. He has launched a new series on the Trail of the Nephilim, and his first independent film was released in March of 2017. The title of the series is, in their own words, UFOs Are Real. This is a hard-hitting expose on the burgeoning UFO phenomenon. The series is geared toward the skeptic as a wake-up call to what he calls the coming Great Deception. He then toured Portugal for 2 weeks, which resulted in his latest film, Fatima, Miracle of the Sun, or Harbinger of Deception. He recently held a press conference in Los Angeles and flew in researchers and experts who presented. Mondo Gonzalez, the team's archaeologist, presented the long-awaited DNA results from the enigmatic elongated skulls of Peru. Rick Woodward, the team's anthropologist, lectured on the unique position of the foramen magnum, and this is what was backed up by Dr. Michael Alday, MD, and Dr. Malcolm Warren. He is a frank supernaturalist who has lectured on the subjects of UFOs, the Nephilim, and ancient prophetic texts, presenting his exhaustive research at conferences and churches, as well as appearances and interviews on numerous national and international radio and television shows. Please join me in welcoming Elaine Marzulli.
Thank you. Thank you, appreciate that. How's everybody doing? I've got 2 hours, so many slides. I just want to thank Race Hobbs, the KGRA, for bringing me in, and I just want to, it's a real honor to be here. So let's get right into it. I am Elaine Marzulli. I've written actually 13 books, 14 is in the oven, co-produced 10 DVDs, 5 more, and I yak pretty much all over the planet. But let's get, there's 2 paradigms that we can look at with the whole UFO phenomenon. And one of the presenters a little earlier talked about sort of a unified theory for everything, and that's exactly what we're going to do. And I had no idea he was going to talk about that. That's exactly what we're going to do in just a few minutes, because I think all this stuff, there's a connectivity to it. In other words, Bigfoot, elongated skulls, the Fatima apparitions, abductions, UFOs, hybrid beings, there's a connectivity here. And I find it incredibly interesting that we're in this window of time. We've got technology, so we can really probe. Like, 50 years ago, there were no DNA testings. So when you went down and looked at the elongated skulls, well, you didn't know what you were looking at. You don't know where they came from. Our DNA testing proved, and I'll get to that a little bit later, that they were actually Middle Eastern and European. Folks, that rewrites history. It really does. It rewrites history, because we're not supposed to be there. So there's 2 paradigms concerning the UFO phenomenon. Is it extraterrestrial, or is it interdimensional? What is it really? And of course, I'm not here to sway you one way or the other. I'm just going to lay stuff out. So we'll start. If we are intellectually honest, no one who has ever lived in the past or will live in the present has any clue, has any idea of what this really is and where we really are in it. What I mean by that, if the universe is analogous to the United States of America, is planet Earth in Duluth, Walla Walla, Tampa, Florida, Boston, Massachusetts? No one knows. Nobody knows where we are and what this is. There's a lot of theories. We can speculate till we're blue in the face. But if we're intellectually honest, we don't have a clue. Let me ask you something. You're all sitting there. If I ask you right now, who did you take of a senior prom? How come that image pops into your head? Where does it come from? You're not going, senior prom, let's bring it up here. It's in the file somewhere. How come it just goes there? Where is your consciousness stored? Who are we? Who are you? And where is you? It's not in your brain. They've dissected that every way till Sunday. It's not there. It's not some little guy going, here I am. It's not that way at all. So where are we really? Who are we really? We're sitting there. Our hearts are beating. We're breathing. We're not thinking about, okay, let's get our heart. We're not doing that. Ready? Breathe. How does it work? Where do we go when we sleep? Why do we need to sleep? See where I'm going with this? We are truly, fearfully, and wonderfully made. We are an incredible... We are inhabiting these little three-dimensional biological bodysuits, and for the most part, they work really great. I'm 68 years old, and I run and work out and stuff, and I get sick every now and then, but for the most part, it just runs. It starts to wear out a little bit. I've got more aches and pains now than I did when in my 20s, that's for certain, but it works. And as you're sitting here and you're listening to me, what is language? And how does my language go through the air? Yeah, science can reduce it to just a series of formulas and the speed of sound and all that. But what is language, and why do we have language? And why are there so many different languages on the planet? I mean, these are incredible mysteries that we just take for granted. And I believe that the universe, I truly believe this, I believe we are in some sort of a holographic universe. There's an ancient prophetic text that tells us that the heavens will be rolled up like a scroll, and a new heaven and new earth will be created. How? Is that allegory? Is it metaphor? Is somebody just writing that stuff because it sounds poetic and sounds cool? Or is there something really to it? So that's what I mean. We can reduce it to different, oxygen and hydrogen, and there's this and dust bowls, and I get all that. But no one really has any idea of where the complexity of a deoxyribonucleic DNA molecular structure came from. No one knows. When Watson and Crick, and I'm getting way ahead of myself, but I'll get into that a little bit later. The bottom line is when Watson and Crick discovered DNA, Crick was blown away. And he realized, and he actually wrote this, that no matter how many billions of years of primordial slime, there's no way this thing just sprang into existence. There's no way it just happened. And why is it that in the theory of evolution, it was slowly evolving? Why is it, and I keep asking me this, show me anything, just show me one thing that's becoming something else. Just show me anything, just one thing. Some people would say the duck-billed platypus. Those are leftover parts. I don't know. But the bottom line is this. We don't have a clue as to where we really are. We have no idea of what this really is and where we are in it. And frankly, that should keep most of us up at night. It keeps me up. I'm always kind of going, what is this really? Where are we? What is life? What is consciousness? Do I have a soul? Is there an afterlife? How did this get here? Okay, there's two sides of the aisle here. We have no proof, but if we extrapolate, based on the best information we have available to us, we have to come to the conclusion that other life probably exists out there and perhaps in many places. That's the extraterrestrial hypothesis. I've been asked about UFOs, and I've said publicly I thought they were someone else's, some other civilization. Unknown objects are operating under intelligent control. It is imperative that we learn where UFOs come from and what their purpose is. The only way the ancient astronaut theory can be disproven is when they show up and say, we were never here in the past. I love that quote. That's Mr. Tsoukalos, thank you. We're half extraterrestrial and half human. We're hybrids. The nations of the world, go back. The nations of the world will have to unite, for the next war will be an interplanetary war. The nations of Earth must someday make a common front against attack by people from other planets. Of course the flying saucers are real, and they are interplanetary. This is the other side of the aisle. We'll start with Dr. Jacques Vallée. Human beings are under the control of a strange force that bends them in absurd ways, forcing them to play a role in a bizarre game of deception. Remember, these are quotes taken from his book. I'm not making this stuff up. We are part of a symbiotic relationship with something which disguises itself as an extraterrestrial invasion so as not to alarm us. There seems to be no evidence yet that any of these crafts or beings originate from outer space. A large part of the available UFO literature is closely linked with mysticism and the metaphysical. It deals with subjects like mental telepathy, automatic writing. We'll get to automatic writing in the Fatima, which I'll show you in about an hour from now, but I digress. It deals with subjects like mental telepathy, automatic writing, and invisible entities, as well as phenomena like poltergeists, ghosts, manifestation, and possession. Many of the UFO reports now being published in the popular press recount alleged incidents that are strikingly similar to demonic possession and psychic phenomena. UFO behavior is more akin to magic than to physics as we know it. The modern UFO nauts and the demons of past days are probably identical. The UFO manifestations seem to be, by and large, merely minor variations of the age-old demonological phenomenon. That's John A. Keel. Whitley Strieber. And when I read this, when I read his communion book, I could read like 20 pages at a time. I'd have to put it down. I couldn't bear it. It was so horrific. It took me to a place that I never wanted to go to. So this is from Communion. I became entirely given over to extreme dread. The fear was so powerful that it seemed to make my personality completely evaporate. Whitley ceased to exist. What was left was a body in a state of raw fear, so great that it swept around me like a thick, suffocating curtain, turning paralysis into a condition that seemed close to death. I died, and a wild animal appeared in my place. Does anyone in this room think that's a good thing? Please raise your hand. Okay. I guess we're all on the same page. This is Dr. Jacques Vallée, and I'll close with what he has to say. The symbolic display seen by the abductees is identical to the type of initiation ritual or astral voyage that is embedded in occult traditions in every culture. The structure of abduction stories is identical to that of occult initiation rituals. The UFO beings of today belong to the same class of manifestations as the occult entities that were described in centuries past. The occultist, this is J.H. Pember, fantastic book, by the way. The occultist is brought into intelligent communication with the spirits of the air and can receive any knowledge which they possess, or any false impressions they choose to impart. The demons seem permitted to do various wonders at their request. The medical examination to which abductees are said to be subjected, often accompanied by sadistic sexual manipulation, is reminiscent of the medieval tales of encounters with demons. Again, this is Dr. Jacques Vallée. It makes no sense in any sophisticated or technical framework. Any intelligent being equipped with the scientific marvels that UFOs possess would be in a position to achieve any of these alleged scientific objectives in a shorter time and with fewer risks. So, what is the elongated skulls of Paracas? The Fatima apparitions of 102 years ago? The giants found all through North America? And UFO abductions have in common. Before I get into this and Robert Salas's abduction, I want to tell you something. When I was 13, the Beatles had made this scene. They were on Ed Sullivan. I became a total Beatle freak. By 16, they brought in the whole Eastern mysticism and all these books, and I began to read Carlos Castaneda. And I was at Woodstock at 19, and I inhaled as deeply as I could. Unlike our former president. I did not do that. Sure, Bill. Mm-hmm. I'm in Arkansas, I better be careful here. But the bottom line is this, that, I was a student of the occult. I had spirit guides. I opened up my chakras. I went to gurus. I did I did silver mind control and passed the test where you go down and you scan with your counselors, your spirit guides, and you come up with the answer. And I did all that. Then I was enamored by this little 14-year-old guru, Guru Maharaji. And I went to a meeting, and everyone was on their faces, pranaming, bowing to this guy. And the next day I received knowledge from a Mahatma, a holy man. My third eye was open. I saw divine light. I heard celestial music. I was drinking nectar. It was just automatically coming down the back of my throat out of nowhere. I astral projected. I did all these things, okay? I had spirit guides at some point. I did the Carlos Castaneda stuff after I left the guru. So I was immersed in this. All right? I was totally immersed. And I was looking, I was into it because I knew something was going on, just like all of you. That's why we're all here. We know something has gone on. We're groping, looking, hoping for answers. So I became an agnostic from 27 to 30. At 30, I had a Paul on the road to Damascus experience. That's 39 years ago. That experience changed my life and set me on the course which I'm on today. And my overarching theme basically is on the trail of a Nephilim. That is what we're into, because that to me is a linchpin of what this whole thing is about, and I'll get into that. Robert Salos' abduction, we talked to him. Most of you, I assume, how many people know who he is? I mean, he's been on the circuit for a while, and he was abducted, but he never would tell the story like the History Channel, because what he was afraid of, he would have no control over the story, and they would massage it. And that's happened to me and other people who have been on some of these shows, where they'll take your words and they'll say something like, Noah was an alien. And it's like, I never said that. Stuff like that. So Salas came on with us. We signed the thing, giving him carte blanche in the editing process, which no one does. In other words, he got to look at the rough edit and give it a thumbs up or a thumbs down. And he looked at it and says, wow, it's really fair, and you guys can do it. So we did this. It's in one of our Watchers series. Richard Shaw was the director, and Richard and I co-produced this thing. So Robert Salas was on a ballistic missile base at its commander in '67 when a red UFO landed near the front gate and disabled all 10 missiles. Later, other bases had the same thing happen, with various witnesses, including Captain Bradford Runyon, who saw the ship from his B-52 bomber. It was also plotted on radar. Later, he read a report that a 20-ton missile silo lid had been removed and placed on the ground during the UFO intrusion. We don't know how many bases had the same thing happen, but it was more than one. Years later, Salas was abducted. I want to call your attention to one thing right here, 20-ton missile silo. 20-ton missile silo. And when I saw this, when he told us this, we had just been to Peru, where we went to Sacsayhuaman. And this has nothing to do with the presentation, but it has everything to do with the presentation, because we see a dovetailing of events. 20-ton silo door moved in Sacsayhuaman, and I really should get a picture right after this, but I didn't have one in this slideshow, okay? But Sacsayhuaman is how many people have been there? Okay, just a few. Put it on your bucket list, because when you go there, you'll sit there and you'll stare at this huge wall, which is about as high as the ceiling, and some of the stones weigh upwards of 120 tons. It's in Peru, Sacsayhuaman. It's 12,000 feet above sea level. The quarry is 45 miles away. There are no beast of burdens, for crying out loud, in Peru. All they got is little llamas. So how are they moving the stones? 10,000 llamas on a llama train? Are you kidding me? It doesn't work. And you go there, and the docents say, the Inca were master stonemasons. Tink, tink, tink. Copper chisels don't carve andesite. And you can't take a 110-ton stone and make it polygonal shapes like this. And when you stand there, you just go, time out, we're looking at technology that we don't have today. Because I've gone to stonemasons with this. I've gone to architects with this and show them pictures. Hey, can you build me something like this in my backyard? And they just go, yeah, out of, we can make some molds, and it's not that way. How did they move the stones? So when Robert Salas told that report, 20-ton missile silo door picked up and just set aside like it's nothing, I went, there you go. There's the connectivity, see what I mean? So they seem like two unrelated deals, and yet I'm not saying UFOs built Sacsayhuaman, but they might have. In other words, the same inhabitants that's flying around in the atmosphere could have done that thousands of years ago. And I would posit to you that that's exactly what happened. That these guys are the same guys that built Sacsayhuaman, that did the Tower of Babel, that did all sorts of stuff, that are creating modern-day hybrids. I think there's a connectivity. I think it's a unified theory. So, Salas, years later, he's laying in bed. And all of a sudden, this kind of like blue fog comes through the door. Next thing he knows, he sees these guys. They're wearing hoods. And when he told us this story, he was emotional. He wept several times. I mean, it was like a really gut-wrenching interview for me as an interviewer, because this guy is like, look, I'm a student of body language. And I could tell, first of all, he was nervous, he was emotional, he was reticent. And I just tried to soothe him and tried to draw out the story. And he started to talk, and he got a little looser, and things got better. And then he kind of hit the wall at one point and just broke down and wept. And then we paused, and, it's okay, and how about some water, and, here you go. Just joking. Just joking. It's been over 40 years, folks. So Salas, but, you got to have some humor with this stuff, right? So Salas is in bed, and he sees these two figures. The next thing he knows, he's paralyzed. We all know the story. We've heard it so many times. I mean, it's just ridiculous, but I have to say it. So he's then levitated off the bed. Whoever these entities are, Think about this. They can manipulate space, time, matter, and energy in ways that defy our physics. They do it, and they do it with ease. It's not like they're sitting there fumbling with some gadget going, how high do we make it? Whoop, we just hit the ceiling. Crap. Oh, not again. You know, they don't do that. I mean, Salas is just lifted off the bed. He's totally paralyzed. He can't move. As I interviewed Dr. Jacobs, and he's in our books. He's in our Watchers series. I've interviewed him several times. Great guy. And Jacobs sort of says tongue-in-cheek in the film, in one of our Watchers films, that every person that he's worked with and hypnotized and regressed, whatever, they always say the same thing. Well, I got to the window, and the window was closed. And I thought to myself, are they going to open the window? And what they don't realize, Dr. Jacobs would say, is that every person who's been abducted and gets to the window thinks the same thing. Are they going to open the window? And of course, they don't open the window. They go through the window. And that defies our physics. And this is why, one of the reasons why I think we're in a holographic universe. And these entities who come from another dimension, which is why I am firmly entrenched in the interdimensional camp. I'll tip my hat and let you know where I stand. But that's where I stand. Because they're manipulating space, time, matter, and energy that just doesn't make any sense at all. They do stuff which is just wacky. Here's a story from an ancient prophetic text. I'll tell it to you. You tell me what it sounds like. There's a guy in a jail cell. There's two other guys with him. They're chained to the wall. Okay? They're not going anywhere. There's guards in the corridor. The jail cell is locked. They're not going anywhere. They're in a prison. There's a big prison gate outside. They're not going anywhere. Guards are patrolling, right? All of a sudden, an entity appears in the jail cell. This one guy looks over, and the other two guys with him are still asleep, and he can't figure out what's going on. He's not sure he's awake or he's asleep. This entity communicates with him and says, get your things, let's go. He finds all of a sudden that the chains fall off of him. Now, the angel's not sitting there going, or the entity is not going, He's just, the chains fall off. They get to the prison door cell. The prison door cell opens by itself, the jail cell, and out they go. You know, this entity isn't like fumbling for keys going, I think it's this one. So he's manipulating space, time, matter, and energy. The jail cell opens up. They walk out into the corridor. The guards who were walking the corridor are now switched off. They're asleep. They're switched off. What does it sound like? And they get outside, and the prison door opens by itself, and the entity disappears, and this guy goes free. If I didn't know any better, you know, to me, it's classic abduction, except it's a good guy that breaks him out. The same type of phenomena that we see in the UFO abduction phenomena is actually written about in ancient texts, except it seems to be another entity who seems to be benevolent. The guys that get you at 3 o'clock in the morning and take a 5-year-old boy and implant him and do horrible things to him with probes and things. How many think it's good to have a probe, if you're a man, and have a needle like that inserted into your manhood? Is that a good thing, anybody? Any of you guys want to sign up for that? Okay. Because that's what happened to Salas. So he's taken, he's levitated, and he goes to the window, and of course he goes to the window. Next thing he sees is this guy, laying on the metal table. We've all heard the stories. This guy's got a nice long needle like this, and Salas is wondering, this can't be good. I don't like needles. This can't be good. And of course the thing inserts it in his manhood. Why? He harvested sperm. When women are taken, they harvest ovum. They harvest eggs. There's a breeding program going on. We've had encounters with people, and I'll get to that in a little bit. It's a lot to get to. But we've had encounters from people that have had encounters. We've had stories, I should say, testimonies from people who have had encounters with hybrids, hybrid entities, which can only be described as some sort of a hybrid entity. I think, as Dr. Jacobs thinks, that they are walking amongst us. And this goes back when Graham Hancock takes ayahuasca for the umpteenth time, and he winds up going to some other place. And in that place, to his perplexity, are the grays. And he's kind of scratching his head going, why are the grays here? Where am I that these grays, like these little gray alien things, are here? Why are they here? Where? In fact, Graham doesn't even really know where he is. And he takes the ayahuasca, and up he goes. And at the end of this book, Supernatural, and you can read it for yourself, he goes through this whole torturous thing to try to bump up and find out what's going on. And he gets a piece of the puzzle. And he says this, that whoever these entities are, they seem obsessed with creating a hybrid with us. And this hails back thousands of years ago to ancient prophetic texts like the Book of Enoch, found in the Dead Sea Scrolls. That's where it hails back to. So this is happening in modernity, with Graham Hancock, but it happened thousands of years ago. It's been ongoing. They're obsessed with creating a hybrid being. And from our reports, the hybrids can pass. They look human, they act human, they can be a little funny looking sometimes or do weird things, but for the most part, they can pass. So Salas is there, he sees this guy, sperm is taken, ovum is taken. High strangeness in the lab. Richard Shaw and I met Dr. Roger Lero, I should back up. I met Dr. Roger Lero in 1999. My first book came out, Nephilim. And there was a guy, Barry Schwartz, his book came out on the Nephilim also. So I went down to a MUFON meeting, and I met Barry, and I gave him his book, and he gave me his book, and we struck up a friendship that lasted until his untimely death. But I met Dr. Roger Lero there for the first time. And Roger was like everybody's favorite uncle. He appears in all of our Watchers films from 1 to 10. He passed away at the end of 10, and we dedicated the last film to him. He's just a great guy. We all lived sort of close together, so we would meet at Brent's Deli and just have lunch and talk shop basically. So Roger's at this meeting, this MUFON meeting, 1999, and I go, hey, I've read about you, and I understand that you're taking out implants. And he goes, yeah, you want to see one? I go, yeah, okay. And he goes, here. And he reaches into his coat pocket, he takes out a little vial, and he shakes it in front of me. He goes, hold out your hand. So I hold out my hand, and he goes, doink, and there's the implant in my hand. I'm sitting here going, you have got to be kidding me. You have got to be kidding me. So anyway, one thing we used to whenever we're doing the Watcher series, and you'll see this in a little bit, this guy came to us who said he had an implant. And I'll talk about that in a little bit, but I'm just kind of queuing you up of where we're going to go. But Roger was in the field. He's not an armchair researcher, he's out in the field, just like I am. I'm out in the field a lot. Yeah, I read, I'm constantly reading. I read on planes, I read at home, I read in the field, but I'm in the field a lot. We're actually going up to America's Stonehenge, and we'll be filming there this month, April 23rd, for the new series that we're doing. But Roger had this encounter where this entity came in and abducted this person from the bed. The bed on one side was magnetized where the person who was actually abducted, taken from. So one side of the bed is magnetized, the other side isn't. How does that work? But what's great is, see the little fingerprints? The window is right here next to the bed. The fingerprints are right next to the window sill. And they're four-fingered, and they're the size of a child's. No kids in the house. The avocado tree in the backyard spontaneously combusted at one point. Yeah, so this is like high strangeness. So Roger goes, can we take the drywall? We'll replace it. So the owner of the house goes, yeah. And the way they found this, they learned. They walked through the house with a black light, and anything would fluoresce, they knew. And so there it is. It fluoresced, and it left like a little residue of like some sort of powder-like substance on the drywall. So Roger cuts the thing out. We take it down to Seal Lab, where we would all meet, and we took a little scraping of it and put it in a scanning electron microscope. There's another shot of the four-fingered, and this is really small. Notice the bulbous ends of the fingers. So we're looking at something else entirely. And here we are in Seal Lab. And there's the tech behind the computer. There's the scanning electron microscope right there. And that's Steve Colburn. He worked very closely with Roger. So here's the tech, and he's looking at this, and there's another monitor up here that we're all looking at, but the tech's referencing his monitor here. And so I finally asked him this question. I go, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but is it safe to say that this handprint was not created by a human being? And the tech looked at me and just said, yes. He's a man of few words. And the reason for this was the elements in that powder did not at all match up with what a human being would look like. So this is why we call it physical evidence, because that's like a first. And thank you, Roger. So these are hybrids amongst us. 2 encounters. This is from a friend of mine. This guy's name is Mike. And Mike is a pastor of a church in Kentucky, and I've spoken at his church a couple of times about the Nephilim and the giants and all this stuff. So one day, Mike is out. It's a summer day. He's doing a walk, and he's just thinking about people in his congregation and the sick and all this kind of stuff, and just praying for them. That's all he's doing. There's nothing like religious about it. He's just thinking good thoughts towards people. What's wrong with that, right? And he's walking, and in the distance, he sees this runner who's got striking platinum blonde hair, and she's tall and very athletic, 6'2", 6'3". And okay, volleyball player, basketball player, just someone who's tall and athletic. He doesn't think anything of it, but he's unsettled, and he's not sure why. As this woman comes closer, she's very athletic, long stride, and very pretty also. And as she comes closer, their eyes meet, and he can see that she has blue eyes, but as she comes closer, the eyes go black, jet black. At this moment in time, he's a real smart guy. He goes into what I would call spiritual warfare, and he begins to rebuke the thing coming to him, because that's what you do. You don't go, "Hi, my name." You don't do that, because you don't know what this thing is, right? So as she goes running by, remember, he's like verbally accosting her, not doing anything physically, just verbally rebuking what he sees, black-eyed, coming at him. And what she does is she runs by, she turns to him as she's running, she bares her teeth, and she growls at him and keeps on running. He's never seen her again. Was that a hybrid? You tell me. In other words, it passes for human until something triggered it, and we don't know what. I have a feeling I know what that something is. Something triggered the hybrid. The eyes went black, and the hybrid being going, "Hi, I'm just out for a nice little jog in the morning. How are you?" She bares her teeth and growls. And what Mike wrote was, "Welcome to the war." So I think that they're there. This other one came from a lady who wishes to remain anonymous. "Hi, strangers in the market. In June 2012, I was with my husband and daughter at our local country fair. When my daughter was on a ride, we noticed two younger-looking people walking around to the left of us, heading towards the ride. We stood and watched these two, which looked male and female, possibly brother and sister. They looked very similar. They moved in sync, not at all like a human walks. One tried to gain access to the ride, and the gate was shut. The carnival worker stuck out his hand like, 'Hey, what the heck are you guys doing?' They stood waiting together for the ride to end." Stop right there. That is bizarre conduct. Most kids know how a carnival works. You don't go up to the carnival worker and try to open the gate and crash the ride. None of us would do that. And so that was really odd behavior. And of course, the carny guy is going, maybe these kids are on drugs. The person who wrote this thought the same thing. My gut was in check. First honest thoughts were these kids were on drugs. My husband and I both gave each other the same look like, wow, these guys are really messed up. My daughter got off the ride and we began to walk away. I turned back to look, and these two people, were standing there with their necks arched up in an impossible way and smiling, or rather smirking at me. This was broad daylight, and I couldn't believe it. Stop right there. In other words, they appear to be human, right? But they're dressed weird. They're doing some weird things like trying to crash the ride. And then when she looks back, they know that they've been outed, and they look right at her. Necks are arched in an impossible way, and they're smirking at her. They're leering at her like, "We know you know, but what are you going to do about it?" So, I didn't say anything to my husband in front of my daughter, but I knew what I saw was not human, but acting like it. I waited till later to talk to my husband. I was hoping he would say, "Yes, I saw those two weirdos. They must have been on drugs," and then maybe I could have tried to forget what I saw. Instead, he looked at me straight in the eye and said, "They were not human." My heart just sunk. These beings are some type of reptilian who had physical human-looking bodies were at our small-town Iowa fair. This is no joke or deranged fantasy. I wish I had never seen them and had it confirmed either by another witness. This is what we get in our email box. We joke that this is the real X-Files, except we don't go home at the end of the day and forget about it. We have all sorts of cases, all sorts of files. If something is really going on, sometimes we travel to the place and talk to the person, get them on film, get their record, try to get their testimony. That became the basis of the film. In their own words, UFOs are real. Everybody that has been on, that comes on the record, has actually had an experience. Everything from just orbs, lights in the sky, physical encounters, being abducted, being taken, implants, craft of all sizes, boomerang. Most of us know the stuff, right? The most chilling thing to me is this one guy, Al, who becomes the centerpiece of the whole film. When I went up to Vancouver, Canada, where this man lived, I had no idea that I knew some of his story, but not the depth of it. And this guy was just contacted from like a really early age, like 8, 9, 10 years old. And this thing had gotten to the point where he fled the eastern part of Canada and moved out to Vancouver to try to get away from them. And as we all know, you can't get away from them. They know exactly where you are. And so Al became the centerpiece of the film, and I had no intention that was going to happen. So Al's encounter is this, and I'll run the clip here in a second. Sound man, be aware of the volume, please, in just a moment. Thank you. But Al's a professional mover, and this woman just came in from Kuwait. She's got this large ocean-going crate. It's stuffed with furniture. So Al meets her. Pretty gal, nothing weird, except she's got these dark glasses that almost look like fishing goggles or swimming goggles. You know, sometimes swimmers, they wear those real goggles, and they're really tight to your skin. Well, these were sunglasses, but the sunglasses stuck right to the sides of the head. No light could get in. So he figures, you know, glaucoma, some kind of thing, medical condition. He doesn't ask, he doesn't think about it. And they kind of chit-chat. And then he finds himself on the elevator, freight elevator, going up to where the crate is, all the furniture is. He's never met this woman before, never seen her before, has no idea who she is or anything else. They're in the elevator, just the two of them alone. She leans forward and whispers in his ear, and she says, "They're listening, Al." And he goes, "They're listening? Who's listening?" And she goes, she kind of laughs, and she goes, "You know who? The Greys. I know that you've been abducted many times, and so have I. We were supposed to meet on the ship." She says this to him. And I stop him in the interview and I go, "Well, what did you do?" At the end of the move, he gives this woman his phone number. It's like, and in the film I go, "Mistake number one." It's like, I call this UFO brain fog. There's people that we've talked to. For instance, let me just break the story here. Another woman, there's all these girls are gone to a dance, they're driving home, they see lights in the sky, right? They pull over, they see it, they get freaked out, they get in the car, and this is what she says: "We were speeding, but we weren't going anywhere." UFO brain fog. We were speeding, but we weren't going anywhere. Well, that's not normal, and you know that's not normal. Why would you say something like that? And when they get to the place to drop off the girls, they're 3 hours late, missing time. So getting back to Al, sure enough, this woman calls him several weeks later and invites him up for a drink. So Al goes, you know, "Sure, I'll come up." So he goes up, and that's where the story picks up. So this woman is at a friend's house. She's still wearing the dark glasses, and the thing will speak for itself, I hope.
I walked into their place, I buzzed up. Her friend answered the door. It was her apartment, a beautiful 2-story condo right on the Fraser River, obviously in BC. And they're both out on the deck, and they have these big glasses of wine.
Now, did the friend look normal to you?
Totally normal.
Okay.
And she introduced
no sunglasses?
her. No, just normal.
Okay.
No sunglasses. Right. She introduced her to me, and I could tell they'd been drinking, and then I'm not passing judgment. They're having some fun. And she introduced her friend. We sat down on the deck. She's still wearing those strange glasses. Their glasses of wine are right in front of me on a table. And out of the corner of my eye, I noticed this massive black fly in her wine glass. And it's almost like it was stuck to the glass. It didn't make sense. It wasn't moving, and I pointed it to her. I said, "Oh, look, there's a big fly in your wine glass. I'll grab some Kleenex and get it for you." She smiled at me and she goes, "No, I'll get it." She put her finger in the wine glass. She didn't crush the fly. The fly stuck to her finger, and she put it towards her mouth and went like this. And I just looked at her and I go, "Holy smokes." I go, "If you're hungry, I can make you a sandwich. Why did you do that?" And she just smiled again. So that's the starting of how strange this got, and it only got stranger. From there, she took off her glasses. She got on top of me while I was sitting in my chair, and she started lifting up my shirt. And I said, "What are you doing?" And she goes, "Oh, how old are you? You're well preserved."
Let me stop you there. So this is not typical behavior for you?
No, not at all.
Okay, so this is something normally you wouldn't allow this?
No,
okay.
I figured it's because she'd been drinking, but it got a little carried away when she started asking me how old I was. And the glasses were off, as I said. She went to kiss me, and I pushed her away, and her eyes shape-shifted.
Now, when you say, what did they look like before? What did they?
Just normal. I don't know if they're brown eyes. Or they certainly weren't like blue eyes or emerald eyes. I would have noticed that right away. I think they were just normal, darker looking eyes, but the whites were white. When I pushed her back, when she went to kiss me, I pushed her back. Her eyes shape-shifted. The whites went to a golden color with black streaks, and her pupils shrunk. I upset her, and that's what happened. When I pushed her back, her eyes shape-shifted, and I pushed her off me. That was my reaction. And I said, "What the heck was that?" And she gave me the most evil laugh you've ever heard. And I got the heck out of there.
So you ran out of there?
I ran out of there, and she was chasing me. I'm not telling you anymore.
Did the pupils, were they round pupils or were they
Round.
serpentine?
Round.
Okay, round pupils.
Yeah. What I would describe her eyes as, it's like a snake eyes or a reptile's eyes.
Reptile's eyes. What's interesting about this, I just want to go over this real quickly, that I call this UFO brain fog. And you see me stop him in the interview. No one's ever challenged him on this before. Al, is this normal behavior? You have a girlfriend. Would you allow this woman to basically sit on your lap like this? And you know, he goes, no. And you see, he's like, well, I've never thought about that before. I call this UFO brain fog. But when you're around these entities, when you're around these entities, whatever they are, we can't think straight. And I hear this over and over and over again from people who have been taken, for people who have had close encounters, people who have had abduction experiences, people that have encounters with hybrid beings. It's like we kind of short circuit. It's hard to think, and that's think rationally. We were speeding, but we weren't going anywhere. There's more stories, but I don't have time to get into them all, my gosh. So I want to talk about the Nephilim, a nefarious extraterrestrial entity, meaning with the women of Earth. That's how I'm going to define it. A nefarious extraterrestrial entity, mating with the women of Earth. There's an ancient prophetic text that says the dragon's offspring will be at war with the offspring of the woman. And before I get into that, I should just give you the clincher to Al. The reason why I went up to see him is because about 24 hours after this event happened, I was on the phone with him, hearing the absolute fear, terror, panic, bewilderment, uncertainty in his voice. And we talked for about an hour, 2 hours on Skype and on the phone and stuff. So, you know, he's okay, he's doing really well, and he's comes on my YouTube channel every couple of months and gives an update. But there's an ancient prophetic text that says the dragon's offspring will be at war with the offspring of the woman. What the heck does that mean? A nefarious extraterrestrial entity mating with the women of Earth. What we know is this. This is from the 1st century historian Josephus. And this race of giants, the Nephilim, who had bodies so large and countenances so entirely different from other men that they were surprising of a sight and terrible to the hearing. The bones of these men are still shown to this very day, unlike to any credible relations of other men. So, look, I've been on the trail of this thing. I've studied, I've read, I've looked at all sorts of reports from the Smithsonian, papers that go from the early parts of the 19th century to the 20th century. We know that they dug up giants. There's no doubt about it. Some of these things were 7, 8, 9, 10, 12 feet. They were big. I'm 6 feet, so the top of that is probably 10, 12 feet. And we'll show you what a 7-footer looks like. I'll show you that in just a second, what a 7-footer looks like. So I get this call from a friend of mine who's another researcher, Jim Watson. He's written a book called Mysterious Catalina. So I read the book and found it really cool, and I called him and said, what about this Ralph Glidden guy who was out on Catalina Island between 1919 and 1921? He was conducting primitive archaeological digs. He was employed by the Hay Museum. The Hay Museum later on gets gobbled up by the Smithsonian. So this guy is like, you know, kind of cutting edge stuff, and archaeology is still a very new science at that point, 1919 and 1921. Some people call him a grave robber at this point, and you know, it's decades later, but he's just doing what he's been told to do. But he's out there and he's digging, and he digs up thousands and thousands of skeletons, but he finds some skeletons that are anomalous. Anyway, he's got this cache of records which goes missing for 50 years, which is then found, and it's front page of the LA Times. And this is when I called Jim Watson and go, Jim, what's going on with this? We have dinner, and he goes, well, the museum has got this stuff. You should try to get in and see it. So I call the museum. No, Mr. Marzulli, you can't see it. So I do emails and all this stuff. This goes on for 6 months. Finally, Jim goes, hey, they're building a new museum. Why don't you offer a contribution and see if, you know, that'll open the doors? So I write them again, and I go, look, I'll give you $1,000 for a contribution for the new museum if I'm allowed to look at the artifacts and the papers and the pictures. Come right in, Mr. Marzulli. And that's how things work. So I was more than happy to write the check. I got there. I hired a private plane because I wanted to get aerial shots of Catalina. You're not allowed into the interior of the island. You're only allowed to go into Avalon. So we landed and actually flew the plane, which was just unbelievable. It was one of those training pilot things. So we're like, he takes off, we're up in the air, and he goes, "Okay, it's yours now." I'm going, "What?" And I had the stick, and I flew in. He landed, but I took off. But I digress. So we land the plane. We're on Catalina. We get down to the museum, and I go, or they go, "What do you want to see first?" And I go, "I'd like to see the pictures." So remember, this was a cache of records. What I get is everything in museum boxes. Everything's in folders. All the pictures have plastic around them. They're all labeled. Everything is nice and neat and organized. So I spend time in the archives. Not a lot of time, but I do spend time in the archives. A lot of times you can be in there for 2, 3, 4 days, and you'll find doodly squat. Maybe you'll get just a little piece of gold dust or something. A lot of times you don't get anything. This was unbelievable. I'm in there for the first 15 minutes. They show me this picture. Because I go, "I want to see the pictures." So they come out with the pictures, and I'm sorting through them. I find this literally within the first 15 minutes to an hour. I take a picture of it, and that's my picture of the original picture, which was 5x7. This is Ralph Glidden. He's 5'8". Okay, the picture's 5x7. Glidden is 5'8". In front of him is a very large skeleton in situ. It's not a disarticulated bone pile, as you can see here. So I send the picture off to 3 people who can analyze the photograph, and each one of these 3 guys has a different way of analyzing it. But they all take it and digitize it. They also figure out where the camera would be, how far the camera would be from the man. But they didn't know what camera it was, but they could kind of tell from the angle and the distance. Ralph was 5'8". They were able to tell all these distances and figure out just what we were looking at. So, there was no collusion between the 3 guys till after I got the reports. Then we Skyped them all in and let them chat, and it was really fun. Because what we discovered was, when you take Ralph Glidden, that's the original photograph, and you stand them up, he looks like this. When you take the skeleton and you stand him up, it looks like that. When you put the 2 together, now we have a problem. Basically, the skeleton is, as you can see here, it's 8 foot 9 inches tall. So the reason why we rounded it down to 8'6" is because we're not sure with the feet. The actual ankles and feet were kind of obfuscated by the picture. Really couldn't tell that. So we, instead of going up to 9 feet, we rounded down to 8'6". So that is a giant, and that's real photographic. Let me go back to the original picture. That is real photographic proof of one. It's not photoshopped. I had the original black and white in my hands. No one knew what this was. This photograph would never see the light of day if I hadn't found it and photographed it. And the reason why it escaped the scrutiny of the archaeologists, they're not in there with the same lens and filter that I have. They're not looking for 6-finger giants. They're not looking for giants. They're just looking for what they look for. And so this thing was cataloged just as another skeleton by Ralph Glidden, but lo and behold, it was not. So this thing goes viral in my book, I'm a Trail of a Nephilim. And what happens is right here, this man is an ex-basketball player. He's only 7 feet. He's only 1 foot taller than I am, okay? I look like a shrimp next to him. I'm 6 foot. I'm a quarter inch shy of 6 feet. So look at a 7-footer. Just picture that right there. That's a 7-footer. Now go up 2 more feet to a 9-footer. Are you kidding me? And you got to ask yourself, why is it that the powers that be deliberately obfuscate this information? Why is it that the powers that be withhold it from the people? Why is it that we're not being told the truth when we have every right to know the truth? What are these people afraid of? Why do they go out of their way? This is science. Science would never do that. Science is, they're the high priest of today's world, right? So we go back to the museum. After I publish the book, I'm on coast to coast. We go back to the museum about 6 months later to see what the museum looks like and what they've done. We walk in and we see this picture. What's wrong with that picture? This is in the museum, the Catalina Museum. What's wrong with the picture? No, they wouldn't do that, would they? Come on now, this is science. This is a museum, LA. These are scientists, archaeologists, anthropologists. They have degrees. They work at universities. They have letters after their name. Surely they wouldn't do to this kind of skullduggery by cropping the stinking giant out of the picture. This is exactly what they did. They cropped the giant out of the picture and they wrote a hit piece on Ralph Glidden. So we filmed in there, and we put that on our channel, and that went absolutely through the roof viral. Then I was on the Vieira Brothers in Search of the Lost Giants, and we showed them, or I talked about this whole thing. So there's the original photograph. That's what the Catalina Island Museum did to it. And you have to ask yourself why. And see, to me, I'm going to bring it home now. There's a connectivity between the abduction of Robert Salas and that giant. Something is going on. Is it safe to say that some outside agency is manipulating the genome to its own ends? They're trying to create a hybrid entity. I'll give you an ancient prophetic text written 2,500 years ago, okay? It says, their seed will mingle with the seed of men, but they shall not cleave to them. Sounds almost like a Nostradamus quatrain. What the heck does that mean? The first tip is, their seed will mingle with the seed of men. Well, it can't be the seed of men, so who is their seed? It's in black and white. It's found in the Dead Sea Scrolls. It's everywhere. Their seed will mingle with the seed of men. And there's a prophecy which dovetails into that, which says, in the latter days, men will run to and fro over the face of the earth, and knowledge will increase. If we were to track world history for the last 6,000 years or whatever, 4,000 years, it's like this, flatlined. People ride horses, they make papyrus paper, they write with ink, they grow an agrarian crop, hunter-gatherers, flatline. Get to Gutenberg, blip, you get a huge spike because now we have a printing press. Gutenberg is a major blip. You come into the modernity, the modern age, and it goes like this. Knowledge increases. And guess what? We're flying to and fro over the face of the earth, aren't we? So the prophecy written 2,500 years ago, men and women will run to and fro over the face of the earth and knowledge will increase. I would posit to you that we are living in that window of time. That's exactly what's going on. Knowledge has increased, and we are going all over the planet, let's face it. Their seed will mingle with the seed of men, but they shall not cleave to them. Are the abductees married? When they're taken, when sperm is taken, is there any marriage contract? But they're re-abducted and told, here, hold this, this is your child, hold this. Is there any marriage contract? No, there isn't. The word cleave is the same word in Hebrew that means given in marriage. And this goes back to the Nephilim thousands of years ago, when the sons of God saw the daughters of men that they were fair and took wives for whoever they wanted, went into them, and the sire and the offspring was the Nephilim. The book of, which is a hybrid being, the book of Enoch says it even more succinctly, found in the Dead Sea Scrolls. It says the angels came down, saw the women, lusted after them, and took wives, and the Nephilim were there. And so the Nephilim were cannibalistic, they were sexually sadistic, they ate and drank human beings, they drank the human beings' blood. Chief Joseph would say this, the modern day giants would come in, and this is a matter of First Nation people. Modern giants, let's say 400 years ago, 500 years ago, would come into a tribe, raid a tribe, and they would get a brave, rip the head off, drink the blood, and throw the body on the ground. That's right from Chief Joseph Riverwind, who appears in most of our films. So they all know about it. They all know most of the tribes fought the giants. The giants were here. Where did they come from? Their seed will mingle with the seed of men, but they shall not cleave to them. There's no marriage contract. And when I look at what's going on in the abduction phenomenon, to me, that's exactly what's going on. There is no marriage contract. Sperm is taken, ovum is taken, hybrids are made. You know, you see your baby 4 or 5 years later, and you're asked to hold it, or 4 or 5 months later, whatever it is. I mean, this whole thing is really strange, really bizarre, and it's always kept in secrecy. You're always abducted, not always, but most of the time, at 2 or 3 in the morning, no one knows about it. How many people here think it's great to have a 5-year-old kid abducted and implanted? Anybody? Is it okay? Let's tear the covers off of this. Is it okay to abduct a 5-year-old kid and implant him? Okay. So if we all agree on that, we haven't drunken the Kool-Aid yet. Is that proper English? We haven't drank the Kool-Aid. We haven't. We haven't done it. So we know it's wrong. So if it's wrong, let me ask you this next question. I want you to go there with me. Is it a good thing, yes or no? Okay. So you just answered your own questions. It can't possibly be a good thing. So if it ain't good, that the nefarious entities behind this thing just might be malevolent. That's up for you to decide. So now we go to the Paracas skulls. And I've been down to Peru more times than I can count, and I'm going down again see Timothy Alberino on May 4th, and we're going to talk about the DNA. Our team, before I get into this, how's my time? I love it. They gave me 2 hours. Yes. Lots of yak will travel. So our team, I put the team together. Pat myself on the back, but I did. We raised the money. We found the labs. We had one donor that gave us an inordinate amount of money. It took us 3 years of writing to Peru to get permission. Our archaeologist, Mando Gonzalez, wrote proper paperwork, all this stuff, wrote the paper, got it out there. It took 3 years for the Peruvian government to give us the stamp of approval to go down and take samples. We took 58 samples. We were dressed head to toe with lab suits that we got from one of the DNA labs. This wasn't a half-baked operation. Mondo was head to toe. We had hairnets, we had masks, we had double gloves, full body suits, booties, the whole deal. They would bring a skull in, we would get dressed, we would come in, we'd blow each other off with compressed air before we would come in. We would take DNA samples. Chase Klotsky was with us. She tagged and bagged absolutely everything. So Mondo would drill, right, or take a tooth, put it in a piece of paper, and go like this. I'd take the paper, I've got gloves on, I'd hand it to Chase. Chase is all gowned too. Chase would take it, and she would never touch it. I would just go tink, tink, tink in the vial. It would fall in the vial. She immediately tagged and bagged it, put it away. The next skull would come in, but in the interim between, let's say we took 3 or 4 samples from that particular skull, right? Then we would go outside, take off all of our stuff, get new stuff. New bonnets, new gloves, new masks, new suits, the whole deal, spray each other off again and go in. We did this for like 4 or 5 hours, taking samples. So when the academic community tells us, oh, it's contaminated, you just want to smash them. Why don't you go down and get your own samples and prove us wrong? We also took our DNA, Mondo's DNA and my DNA. Out of the 58 samples, 1 sample was contaminated with my DNA, immediately thrown out. All the other samples were not. I'm going somewhere with this because this rewrites history. You know, we all heard on the Drudge Report, or it was all over the news, CNN carried it, everybody carried it. A new species found based on a couple of teeth. Well, our discovery is way more groundbreaking than that. Nobody gives a flip, except the skeptics who will say, well, it must have been contaminated. Well, they really don't know what they're doing, or whatever, or the naysayers. When we do know what we're doing, look, DNA doesn't lie. When we send samples to the lab, they don't care what our ideology is, what our theory is, what our hypothesis is. They could care less. It's a machine, and the machine's going to spew out the data. And that's what we did. We followed the data, and we read the data, and the data's in the book down there, the final results of the DNA. So we're down here looking at this skull, and most of you, or some of you may have heard this, oh, well, it's the result of cranial deformation, cradle headboarding. Cradle headboarding is when you take an infant child, and you bind the head, okay, you wrap it with cloth, and you can make a cone head out of it. The question is, why does someone get up at 6:30 on a Monday morning and go, Junior, we're going to make you a cone head today? I mean, why would anybody do that? What's the modus operandi behind creating this type of a shape? And why would some culture deem this really cool? And we don't have all the answers to that, except, and we agree, some skulls are the result of cradle deformation, cradle headboarding. We get that. We're not disputing that. But many of them are not. And our anthropologist on the team had actually groundbreaking material, groundbreaking news, when he discovered morphological differences in the Paracas skulls. Structural differences, morphological differences, structural differences within the skulls themselves. That means they're not human. It's a subspecies of, and again, you would think that any anthropologist would make a beeline, because we showed all this, and I'll show it to you today. But they don't, and gee, I wonder why. I have no explanation. So on the right is a modern human skull here, and on the left is just one of the Paracas skulls. Let's look at this, the Zygomatic Arch, how robust it is, how robust the jaw is. Look at the slope to the forehead here compared to a human. How do you take, I understand you can go up, but how do you fold the forehead back? And that's problematic. That's how they look side to side. Another shot, this is what we call a cone head from Paracas. This came from La Oroja, which is a mining town. We did DNA sampling on this. I'll tell you what it came up in just a little bit. But we also did carbon-14 dating. It was only 800 years old. Yeah, that's a little too close, thank you. This is from 1842. These two, archaeology was in its infancy, so these two researchers go down to Peru, and they're looking at these mummies. And even then, there's this huge huge debate. Oh, it's cranial deformation. Not so fast, citizen, we're not sure what it is. So this is what they wrote. We ourselves have observed the same fact in many mummies of children of tender age, who, although they had cloths about them, were yet without any vestige or appearance of pressure of the cranium. In other words, there's no cradle headboarding there. More still, the same formation of the head presents itself in children yet unborn. And in this truth, we have a convincing proof in the sight of a fetus enclosed in the womb of a mummy of a pregnant woman, which we found in a cave. So what happened was they go in, they see this mummy. They unwrap the mummy, they realize it's a pregnant female. The pregnant female has died for whatever reason, no one knows, okay? But she's pregnant, so they go, let's see what the fetus looks like. So they go in, and this is what it looks like. Look at the neck, look at the skull, look at the teeth. All the women in here who have had children, how many of them have been born with teeth? Thank you very much. And this mummy, we still think is in, this is what drives me nuts. This is what really drives me nuts, and it just makes you want to scream. Somebody knows where this is. And I've offered money. Just let us look at it. Just let us photograph it. Just let us get some DNA samples. What's wrong with you people? Don't you want to know? And they don't care. It took us 3 years to get permits to go down there and take some stupid little pieces of teeth and powder back. You think we were raiding the king's coffers or something. It's just unbelievable. And we've offered, we know you guys know where this is. Let's go look at it because this is enigmatic. Something's going on here. The long neck. Look at the elongated skull, look at the teeth, 1842, and that's a lithograph. There's something that's happening on this planet, and for the life of me, the deep state, call it what you want, constantly obfuscates it. If I was doing, let me back up. In 2016, I was threatened by the deep state. We were at a Dallas conference, this guy wanted to meet me, I said, sure. So I had a security guy with me, he was packing, because it's Dallas. And this guy comes up, he's about 6'2", 6'3", looked like a Men in Black. I mean, it was hysterical. Dark sunglasses, the suit, the whole thing. And I shake his hand, and he shakes my hand, and he pulls out his ID. I look at his ID. He's from some branch, some letter, and he basically threatens me 3 ways that I could die very quickly. What kind of car do you drive, Mr. Marzulli? I drive a go-kart, a 1991 car that's 24 years old that I, restored, and I love it. It's a Mercedes 500 SL, and it's a little go-kart, okay? That's what I drive. I bought it for $8,000, so sue me. And he goes, well, does it have a computer? And I go, yeah. And he goes, well, we can do things with computers. You may not be able to, the gas pedal might go down, and you might not be able to, bring that gas pedal up. He goes, what kind of phone do you have? I go, I have an iPhone. He goes, well, when they arrest you, LA, they can find kiddie porn on that. Now he's really got my attention. It's like, okay, he's going to kill me in my car. He's going to find kiddie porn on my phone, which is the end of everything I'm ever going to do, right? And he goes, do you have any children? I go, yeah, I have 2 daughters. He goes, well, one of them could go missing and never be found. I'm not making this up. I am not making this up. And I have a witness who was there and heard the whole thing. And the reason why I go publicly with this is for my own safety, because I know the more time. If you've ever heard that I've committed suicide with 2 gunshots to the wounds to the head, it wasn't me, right? In the 90s, I'd be dead. Now they don't really care because they know that, well, he's got a little bit of a following, but nobody cares. A bunch of tinfoil hat wearers, millions of people, nobody cares, right? And that's why nothing's happened. But I was driving in the red go-kart. We used to live in the Santa Monica Mountains before the fire. And I'm driving up this windy canyon road doing about 55 miles an hour, which is the speed limit. Coming around a corner like this, and a thought pops into my head. Don't ask me why I thought this. Because there's a cliff right there, right on the other end of the curve, and it goes down, and if you go over there, you're toast. And a little thought popped in my head. It's like, well, if you lost control of the car and you went over here, you'd be dead. And I just, why am I thinking that? And all of a sudden I hear this pop, and I lose control of the car. And I can't move the steering wheel. And and I'm headed towards the cliff. I mean, I'm headed towards the cliff. So I have the presence of mind to jerk the wheel and jam on the brakes, because you're sitting there, there's that 1, 2, well, in 2 seconds, you're going like, you don't know what's going on, and you've already moved 60, 70 feet, so I'm like real close to the edge at this point, and there's gravel. I cut the wheel, slam on the brakes, and fishtail to a stop, a good distance away from the cliff. I could elaborate the story, and my rear wheels were hanging over, but that's not true. but I was okay. So I get out, I pop the hood, and I look at the belt. And when the tow truck driver comes, I go, the timing belt, and I go, what does this look like to you? He looks at the belt and he goes, do you have any enemies? The belt was cut in 3 different places like that. They don't want the information out, which is why they take the photograph that I discovered in their own archives at Catalina and they redact the giant, which is why they look at the DNA evidence and say, oh, well, your evidence doesn't really count because we don't like it. We don't like what it says. So this is a red-haired, this is the 2,000-year-old mummy that we uncovered. Our team went down. It's all in one of our Watchers series. Notice the reddish color of the head. Notice the elongated skull here. And that was a 2,000-year-old mummy skull that we got to unwrap. Our team got to unwrap it. Who gets to do this stuff? And we took DNA. And what's important about this, and I'm going to go somewhere with this. See this guy? We took DNA from him too. Notice the red hair, okay? So, Stephen Colburn, we gave him the hairs. He took one of his hairs, which became the control sample. That's the light blue. Then he took a piece of dyed hair from his wife. All right? So we can see that there's a discrepancy between a normal human hair, and when you dye the hair, it changes its molecular structure. So he had in his possession, because he's a UFO researcher, a man who had allegedly been accosted at night by 2 female hybrid beings and was forced to have sex with them. And so he wakes up the next morning, and on his chest are 2 or 3 platinum blonde hairs. He has the presence of mind to take the hair, put it in the plastic bag. Somehow it gets to Roger Lear, it gets to Stephen Colburn. So Stephen analyzes all this. So here's the hybrid hair here, the light brownish red. And here is the 2,000-year-old mummy hair. Look at the slopes. Look at the way they're almost absolutely identical. That's not coincidence. And in our book, one of our books, which we lost all of our material in the fire, so all of our inventory got burned. That book with his writing in it, his paper, is not in print, at least not yet, but we're working on it. The bottom line is, and what's incredible about this, that this is in modernity, the hybrid hair, this is 2,000 years old. There's a correlation. This goes back to looking at a unified theory. The bottom line is this: there's an outside agency that's obsessed with creating a hybrid being. That's what's going on. They're obsessed with reproducing with us to create some sort of a hybrid being. Graham Hancock says it, and I think that that's ample proof there. So here's something really interesting about the Paracas skulls. This is a normal human skull. This is the foramen magnum. The foramen magnum is your brain hole, okay? Your spinal column comes up like this and attaches to the bottom of the skull right there. But guess what? And this is the work of our anthropologist, Rick Woodward. You can see here that the foramen magnum, first of all, is a different shape. The foramen condyles are totally different. And the foramen ovales are missing. Thank you very much. So it's also way back in the rear of the skull, the occipital plate. You can't cradle headboard a child and push the back of his skull in so it's right up against the foramen magnum. You can't do that. So it's got to be genetic. And if it's genetic, that rewrites history, in our opinion. And that's what we think it is. So we were in Peru at the ICA Museum. And this is the classic Chongo skull. When people go looking for elongated skulls or whatever, Nephilim giants, they'll Google this. This usually pops up. It's usually in a display case in Peru. So we're with the whole museum's closed that day because we're taking DNA samples. The team is there. I'm with the archaeologist who's a resident at this museum. And I say, can we see the Chongo skull? He goes, let me check. So he's gone for about 45 minutes and he comes back. He's talking to the director of the museum. We can go see it. So I can't even believe this. So we pack up all of our stuff. We've got 58 DNA samples. We're ready to go. We leave. We walk into the museum. All the lights are off. We meet the director. They walk into the room where this thing is kept. They flip the lights on. There's a display case. An assistant comes up. They push the display case back from the wall. They slide the glass door, and they pick this thing up. And the reason why we did it, we wanted to see where the foramen magnum was. No one had ever done it. No one had ever done it. That's just the same old thing. Oh, this is all just cradle headboarding. You will hear me go, oh my God, it's in the back. You'll hear me say that, just blown away, because I couldn't believe it when she turned it over. So here's the clip.
This thing is massive.
It really is.
Podemos saber acá.
Turn it over. Oh my God, it's right in the back. Look at that, it's right in the back. Oh my God, you can see it right there. It's the best shot of it. See how close it is to the rear of the skull? Folks, if it's any further back, it's outside the skull. If it's any further back, there's no room. You can't push the rear of, we've had medical doctors look at this. You can't do this. You'll kill the kid. So we're looking at a morphological difference. We're looking at another species. I want to go to the end of the stage. This is going to trip me up. I got to be careful. We're looking at another species which we don't know what it is. And yet you would think with this kind of information, you'd have scientists, anthropologists, archaeologists make a beeline down. Prove us wrong. I'll go where the evidence leads. I don't care. I just want the truth. If it's another species, if it ain't human, then what the heck is it? And that's what we want to know. And I'm passionate about it. You can see. I want to know the truth. What is the truth? I want to know what the truth is. Quit screwing me around. Quit telling me, oh, it's all, cradle-headboarding, when you know it's not all cradle-headboarding. If this doesn't prove it, I don't know what is. And the suturing's all wrong. We have medical doctors look at it, chiropractors look at it, nurses look at it. They all go, you can't do that. And it doesn't have the foraminal valleys where the nerve endings go up from this whole bundle of nerves which create our faces and able to smile. It doesn't have that. We're looking at a new species. The heck with the species that they discovered last week or whenever with a couple of teeth and bone fragments. We've got an entire skeleton. Something is going on, all into the record. So when we did the DNA testing, which I'll get to in just a second, they didn't like the results. So we were supposed to go to phase 2, and oh no, we can't do that right now, we're too busy. So we've got the big stop on us because they don't want to know what the truth is. So let me see. So what we found here is these 3 skulls, which are in Senior Wan's Museum. This is the baby skull that we unwrapped. This is what we call the pirate, and this is the guy with the red hair that we compared on the chart with the modern-day hybrid. All three originate haplogroup H2A, which is European. Okay? So why should we care? I'll get to that in just a second. The DNA analysis of mitochondrial DNA comes from the female side, the maternal side of the equation. There's mitochondrial DNA, nuclear DNA. Nuclear comes from the paternal side, which we've never been able to get, but the mitochondria will tell us roughly where it came from. T2B, the Middle East, which is what I would call Nephilim Central. Am I saying these skulls were Nephilim? They might be, but we don't know because we don't have enough information. But that's our hypothesis. That's why we're doing what we're doing to begin with. So, there's the baby haplogroup U2E, which is Eastern European. Why does this matter? Why is this important? Because you were taught, as I was taught, in high school or in college, if you take biology and history or anything else, we're all taught this Darwinian theory that people migrated from the lands of Beringia at the end of the last ice age when there was a land bridge. We're all taught that. I don't dispute that. Sure, some people came over that way. I get that, but not everybody. And archaeology is entrenched in this one cement intellectual coffin, and it is no one goes anywhere. It's called isolationism. No one goes anywhere, no one's curious. We just stay put in our little village because we're afraid to wander out because we might get eaten by the dragon or something. Isolationism. I am an ardent diffusionist, which means exactly the opposite. People are curious. Hey, Bob, there's a river. Wonder where it goes. I don't know. Let's grab some hot dogs and go. Let's make a canoe. Who cares? Right? Uncharted water. Let's go explore. We'll come back and tell the tribe. Okay. We go down a couple of miles. We see another tribe. We come back. Hey, look what we found. Whatever it is. People are curious. But this idea of isolationism has gotten archaeology locked into this mindset, and they can't get out of it. So why is this important? Because the DNA evidence that I just showed you rewrites history. It tells us with great amount of certainty that people migrated here from the ancient world. And the DNA testing, some of the carbon-14 testing that we did goes back 2,000 years. That little baby skull that we unwrapped with the red hair, the carbon-14 dating showed a 1,935-year date back. So it's about almost 2,000 years old. 2,000 years old, buried in the sands of Chongos. Who gets to do this? We got to unwrap that. Carbon-14 dating U2E. What's it doing there over 1,000 years before Columbus shows up? Get where I'm going? There's a hidden history. Scotty Walter would tell us this, and it's true. There's a hidden history that's been deliberately obfuscated from not only the American people, but the people of the world. And so all we get is the academics poo-pooing our research, and I just say, you go down, you get your own 58 samples and prove us wrong. Just show us where we're going wrong. But then you've got the morphological differences, the structural differences. There is an integration between Robert Salas's abduction, the Paracas skulls that we see, the enigmatic structures like Sacsayhuaman, Chichen Itza. There's a connectivity here. There's a unified theory, in my opinion. It's all connected. It might not seem like it, but it's all connected. The Native American tribes talk about sky gods. Who the heck are the sky gods, and why do they come down? They all know. And why is it that we see Bigfoot sightings with UFO sightings? How could that possibly be related? People see UFOs, all of a sudden Bigfoot. Is Bigfoot a Nephilim? Talk to Ron Moorhead, who's been a Bigfoot researcher for decades. He thinks, in his book Quantum Bigfoot, that Bigfoot is actually a modern-day Nephilim. And I better get going here, or I'm in big trouble. So this is Bill's implant extraction. So this guy comes to us, and this is the X-ray. Bill is 5 years old when he's taken. 5 years old when he's taken. This is all the work that we did in Watchers, I think it's 8. Watchers 8, Bill's implant extraction. He's 5 years old, they come and take him, he fights them off the first time, they leave. The second time, they come and get him, he doesn't even see him, he just goes right through the ceiling. Right through the ceiling, he's on the ship, doesn't remember anything, he hasn't been regressed. So he comes to us, and we went to Dr. Roger Lear. The protocol was get the X-ray. Here's the X-ray. Here's the implant right there. See it? There's the implant. So we know it's there. We do a CAT scan. Roger Lear had a whole protocol that we followed to make sure that all this was on the up and up. Total scientific approach to this thing. So we did a X-ray, CAT scan, ultrasound. We took a magnetometer and checked it there. We took a stud finder that you buy from Home Depot. It was there. Finally, we went to the surgeon, Dr. Matriciana, and we said, okay, we're gonna schedule this thing 2 weeks from now. He takes the ultrasound one, he takes the X-ray, puts a little dot on the guy's leg because that's where it was, takes the ultrasound one and goes like this, and it comes right up. It goes, oh, there it is. We'll see you in 2 weeks. We'll take it out. Great. So 2 weeks go by. We're there. We have 3 camera crews in the place. We've got monitors. We've got about 15 people in a room watching a big 60-inch monitor all the proceedings. Dr. Matriciana, the surgeon, is there. Dr. Roger Lear is assisting. I'm there. Richard Shaw's there. And we're all, I'm figuring 20 minutes, we'll get this thing out, we'll go to an early lunch. It's not what happens. It's not what happens. We're there for an hour and 20 minutes. Matriciana's got the wand in his hand. He's got the X-ray. He knows exactly where the implant is because he saw it there 2 weeks ago, and he found it within a minute and a half, 2 minutes, okay? He's gone over the same 3 by 8 inch area of the leg for an hour and 20 minutes. He can't find the thing. At some point, you can see he's frustrated. He goes, maybe we should get another X-ray. And Roger goes, no, we know it's there. Like this. So this is going to be weird for some of you, but I'll tell you what happened. And it's not what you think, but I'm going to couch it in terms so that we can all agree that this is what happened, okay? My spirit guide taps me on the shoulder, and he's not who you think he is, but that's okay. That's the subject for another time. My spirit guide taps me on the shoulder and says, you need to take authority over this right now. That's what he instructs me to do. You need to take authority over what's shutting this thing down. I go, okay, to myself. So I go to the group of people in the room. This is really crazy. I go, okay, guys, I'm going to say some words here, and I'm going to do it right now. And this is what I said. I said, Father, if there are forces obstructing this thing and cloaking this device, I ask that you would break their power and do it soon. That's all I said. Everybody kind of looks at me like, oh boy, he's out to lunch, right? Less than 2 minutes later, okay, less than 2 minutes later, this is what comes up on the ultrasound machine. And it comes in, there's the implant right there. It comes in from the back of the monitor like this. And everybody goes, oh my gosh, what's that? Matriciana goes, that's the implant. He takes the wand off, hits it like this, looks at it, puts it back on. There's the implant. Looks at it, fiddles with it, is the wires. He can't understand why all of a sudden he can see the implant when he's gone over that same spot where the implant was, and it was right where the magic marker dot was on the guy's leg. It was right there. So he can't understand why for the last hour and 20 minutes that he hasn't been able to find this thing. I would posit to you that there was a power in that room that was greater than the power that was trying to cloak a device. They did not want it out of that guy. They did not want it out of him. You can do with that whatever you want, call me crazy. So 2 days later, I'll show you the operation real quick here. Then we'll move to what Dr. Roger Lear said. So that's the incision. It spreads open. That's the first look at the implant right there. Right there. And that's Dr. Roger Lear. Right there, and that's Dr. Matriciana. And the ultrasound monitor was right there. And that's the implant after we took it out. There's a guy who's made a film of this. It's called Patient 17. And I'm trying to be nice here, and I will be nice, but he basically took our stuff and stole it, for lack of a better word. And you can hear my voice in his film. We're given no credit. We paid for it. We did all the pre-op stuff, and it's just unfortunate. Dr. Roger Lear passed away before any of this was given the green light, so it is what it is. So we're in SEAL Lab 2 days later. This happened on a Saturday, Sunday, Monday, boom. We're in SEAL Lab in Los Angeles. We're going to cut the implant open and see what it looks like. It's an older implant because it's 40 years old. The guy's now 45. He was 5 when he got implanted. He's 45 years old. And the reason why he did something about it, he's riding his motorcycle. I guess I should have told you this in the beginning. And all of a sudden, excruciating pain, just like right here, right where the implant is, and he ditches the bike and rolls on the ground. Happens twice. He gets the x-ray. He realizes, and by a serendipitous series of circumstances, he comes to us. Okay. So it's a 45-year-old or a 40-year-old implant. You could cut it with a razor knife. Number 16, you couldn't cut it with a razor knife. You had to go into a laboratory and cut it with a laser beam. With a laser beam. So this was an older implant. The newer ones, there seems to be an evolution of them, a progression of them. Okay? So Roger Lear and I, and everybody else is in SEAL Lab. We're looking at this thing under a scanning electron microscope. I go, Roger, I need to speak to you. He goes, okay. So he comes out in the hallway, and I look at him, and I said, I hope, this is, God's my witness, this is true. I said, Roger, I hope you understand what happened in that operating theater on Saturday. And Roger looked at me, his eyes got really bulgy, and he says, and this is a direct quote, he said, yes, I saw what happened, and I now believe there's a supernatural element to the UFO phenomenon, and I'm going to tell Whitley Strieber about it. We shook hands, we went back in there. I went to Peru. When I got back from Peru, he had died of a heart attack several days later. Last time I ever saw him. No questions. I can't have time for questions. But questions later, tomorrow. So we miss him. He was a great researcher and a great guy. So let's switch gears to Fatima. And you say LA. Why are we going to Fatima? Wait and see. 1917 to 2017, this is what it looks like. It is dialed in, and I mean really dialed in. 1 million people can be there. And it's all based on the testimony of these 3 kids in 1917. Fatima has dirt roads. There are no airplanes. Most people, 99% of the people, have never seen any type of aerial phenomenon at all. World War I is raging. The Balfour Declaration is being bandied about in the halls of power in England, and the Bolsheviks are seizing power in Russia. European nations are terrified that communism is going to sweep in. And World War I, as I just mentioned, is raging. Enter 3 children, Lucia 10, Francisco 9, Jacinta 7. 3 kids, they're totally illiterate, there are no schools, they are shepherds. They go out and tend sheep all day. That's what these kids do. So, they're met by an entity. And I want to really up front, if you've believed in Fatima, that's fine. Am I here to change anybody's belief system or bag on it? All we did is spend 2 weeks talking to experts and combing the original 1917 handwritten documents. That's what all this material is from, not sourced from stuff in 28 or 35 or 62. We went back to the handwritten documents from the event itself by the parish priest who had the forethought to write everything down. So his documentation is really pretty good. That's our source material. Anything else is gone. on. So the story is, for those of you who don't know it, the three kids are tending their sheep. All of a sudden, this entity appears over a tree and begins to communicate with them telepathically. She gives them something to eat and drink. The girls eat and drink. Francisco only eats, he doesn't drink. So the girls, Lucia and Jacinta, can hear and see this entity. Francisco can see her, but he can't hear her. So now we only have two people who are reporting back the evidence. One's a 7-year-old, the other one's a 9-year-old. And they're completely illiterate. And there's no grid in there's nothing in their grid to deal with what they're looking at. But this apparition is a very small lady, under 4 feet. She's wearing a skirt that comes right below the knees. Women at that time wore skirts and dresses that went all the way down to the ground. Not even prostitutes dressed like this. So there's a huge discrepancy in what the actual handwritten records are and what it later becomes. And we're not going to bag on who the lady was. We're just going to talk about what the phenomenon was. Because what happened there, in my opinion, sets something up. So there's a group of occultists, and I actually got to visit where they're actually based in now. And we interviewed one of the guys who's a descendant from 1917 and now the leader of this thing. So these people are sitting around at a table and they're conducting a seance, waiting for their spirit guides, but using the occult technique of automatic writing. So here's the deal. So you're using automatic writing, and you can see that they're writing from right to left, and it's signed Stella Matutina, the bright morning star. So we could talk about who the bright morning star is. It's not a good guy. So the bottom line is this. Here's the scenario for you. It's 2:30 in the morning. You get a knock on your door, right? 2:30 in the morning. It's pitch black. Knock on the door. Hey, let me in. How many people in this room are going to open the door and let the person in? Raise your hand. There you go. Once again, no Kool-Aid drinkers here. Why is it that these people allow an entity which they have no idea who it is, just because I say, oh, I'm the Archangel Michael? Prove it. Prove it. See where I'm going with this? So, but they let this guy in. He writes automatic writing. So the medium surrenders, allows the entity to come in, much like you would open the door at 2:30 in the morning. How do you know who you're letting in, for crying out loud? And we get this, and it says, something wondrous will happen on May 13th in Portugal. They published this thing in 2 papers, so it's a matter of public record. This is like the original handwritten deal. I photographed this, my photograph of the original handwritten deal that they did this with. So something wondrous is going to happen. Well, guess what? The apparition happens to these 3 kids on May 13th. And this becomes public. So the kids go back to their parents. We saw this lady, yada, yada, yada. And the lady tells them to come on the 13th of every month. So May, June 13th comes, there's a handful of people. Guess what? The apparition appears again over the same tree. Always over the tree. There's other strange phenomena going on with it, but there's just a small crowd of people. July comes and the crowds swell because word gets out, word of mouth, and now the crowds are swelling. So there's a lot of controversy. Some people believe it's of the devil, and other people are going, no, it might be good things. And it's just all this controversy. The magistrate, so August comes, they lock the kids up so they can't go. So there's this huge crowd waiting there at the tree, thousands and thousands of people, and there's all this weird aerial phenomena going on. Clouds and just really strange stuff. People are hearing like a buzzing noise and all this stuff. So September comes, and they say, look, we're going to let you go back. Ask the lady, we need a sign. We need to see what's going on. So the kids go back. They see the apparition again, appears to them. There's thousands of people there, probably upwards of 30,000 people at this point, are waiting in the field to see. No one sees anything. No one hears anything except the kids. However, some people in the field start to perceive weird things are going on. There's like weird light anomalies happening. People see flying hats in the sky. This is 1917. There's nothing in the vernacular that says UFO, flying saucer. That won't come to the mid-20th century. We looked up and saw flying hats. They describe it in the only way that they can. So the kids talk to the entity, and then he says, come back October 13th, there'll be a sign. No one knows what the sign's going to be. No one has a clue as to what the actual sign is going to be. So October 13th comes, word gets out, there are upwards of 70 to 80,000 people. These are the original photographs from Joshua Benolio, a photographer who was in the field that day, October 13th, 1917. These are actual black and white photographs, which we had access to. And by the way, which I can't really say publicly, but I will, the original glass plate shows a disc-like object right here. This is a copy of a copy of a copy. The original glass plate, which Jose Machado saw, shows a disc-like object, but we can't go there because I'm not supposed to tell you that. So thousands of people are looking at something. Something is going on. Something is happening, but no one knows what to look for. There's going to be a sign, but nobody knows what the sign is because the entity didn't tell what the sign would actually be. So the Vatican publishes a paper, the photograph of so-called miracle of a sun, but the problem with this is it was published in 1922. The photograph was taken in 22, 5 years later after the actual 1917 deal. So the people are standing in the rain. There's 70,000 to 80,000 people standing in that field. It's been raining all morning. Suddenly the clouds begin to part, and it's sunny for a few minutes. Then another cloud, moves in front of the sun. Where have we heard this before? Out of this comes a spinning disc-like object, which then falls to the ground in a zigzag pattern, and it goes back up, and it does this 3 different times. And this is where it goes totally off the rails, because you get a real discrepancy in the witnesses of what they were looking at. What most people don't know, there's a fourth witness that was never interviewed. Under the same exact tree that Lucia, Jacinta, and Francisco saw this entity, the fourth witness, who was 12 years old, older than Lucia by 2 years, saw something about a month before. She was out there tending her sheep. Her name is Carolina Carriera. She was out there tending the sheep. And this is all, I'm trying to get this through, but this is Fina di Armato, who did the research in the original archives at Fatima, looking at the transcripts in Portuguese and recording it all on a tape recorder. This is the basis of our research. So, this is what the entity looked like. It was androgynous. It had long blonde hair. It wore sort of a smock. Carolina says, didn't know it was a boy or a girl. So she's out there tending her sheep. That's what the entity looked like according to the girls. She's out there tending her sheep. And as she's tending the sheep, she looks, this being is there, and the being's communicating with her telepathically. Come here. She's afraid to come. She looks at the sheep are paralyzed. They won't move. She looks back at the being, this little androgynous being. The being is no longer on the ground. It's floating above the treetops. All this, what I just told you, is a matter of record, handwritten record in the Fatima archives about the so-called apparition. But it's been changed and doctored to create another narrative other than what I believe is the truth. So then we have the flyby. So 70,000 to 80,000 people are there, and all of a sudden this disc comes down, this disc-like object comes down over the heads of the crowd. As it does this, car windshields explode. Again, I'm drawing everything from the 1917 records. I wish I was making this up. People hear a buzzing noise in their ear. A white-like substance comes down. Their windshields explode. Gas spontaneously combusts. The hoods of the automobiles fly open. People are absolutely freaked out. They are panicked at what they're seeing. They don't know what's going on. Most people, I would say 99.9%, have never seen any type of an airplane at all. This is 1917. There were no we've checked this. There were no airplanes in Portugal. There might have been one in Lisbon at the time, but for the most part, nobody had seen any airplane. This is 1917. I know it's hard for us to believe, but that's what's going on. So no one has seen any type of aerial phenomenon at all. There's nothing in their grid system to prepare them for what they're seeing. There's a disc-like object that flies less than 100 feet over the crowd. And people, witnesses, just like witnesses do, they have different stories. This is real photography from, once again, Joshua Benolio. Something is going on. Now, there are burns on the skin. As this thing goes over, it's been raining all day. People are sopping wet. As the disc flies over, people realize that their clothes are dry, but they also have burns on their skin. What does that sound like to you? What is that analogous to? Sometimes when we get too close, just like one of the other presenters, I forget who it was, talked about the Richard Dreyfuss thing when you stick your head out and you get the sunburn, right? Well, why is it that these people, handwritten documentation from 1917, talk about getting burns on the skin? Others, another shot of it. Hair loss. People lost hair. Windshields exploded. And this is Chase Klodsky talking about the buzzing noise.
Again, a buzzing sound is an all too familiar and common part of the UFO report. Some witnesses describe the buzzing sound as a physical vibration or a sound they can feel around them in the atmosphere. It's a physical sound or buzzing.
So the clothes and ground became instantly dry. Angel hair fell, was later doctored to be rose petals, but that's not what I believe it was. I believe it was what we call what we call term in ufology angel hair. So this is Jose Machado. He got access. He's a semiologist. A semiologist is someone who studies film, photography. That's what he does. So he's out. He's in the Fatima archives. Notice the white gloves. These are the original glass plates. I'm going to show you something. Some of you will go, well, that's just another photograph. I get it. To me, it's a smoking gun. I've always believed that there were photographs. Someone had to have taken a photograph of the so-called miracle of the sun, or at least up to the time when it happened. And sure enough, Joshua Benolio has access to the 1917 records, and guess what he finds? He finds what I think is a smoking gun, and I'll show you that in just a second. So when he was interviewed by a very well-known history channel, I said it, in Europe, he talked about all this. He talked about his research along with Fia Di Armata, who I briefly showed you her picture just a few slides ago. And they talked about the disc-like object, and Jose presented his evidence because he was able to copy the picture and bring the picture out of the archives, which is absolutely unprecedented. He was able to do that. It was a 6-part series. I think his was either 4 or 5, and the producers nixed the episode. It was never aired. They deemed it too controversial to show to the people of Portugal. So the whole episode was nixed. So basically, this has all been censored, kept down. Very few people in Portugal have ever seen this, and very few people in America has ever seen it. So let's walk through this real quickly. Joshua Benolio is way back here, okay? Back here somewhere with the camera. You see the throng of thousands and thousands of people. What's this? And I would posit, I can't prove it, this is after the flyby. The flybys happen, the smoke comes up like this. What do we see right here? And Joshua Benolio, who's a semenologist, looked at this thing and said, it's not a chemical stain, it's not a burn, it's intrinsic in the glass plate. So what we did, and we had people in our film, Fatima 1 and Fatima 2, experts come in and look at this and quiz and drill Jose Machado as to the authenticity of the photograph and the validity of his work. So what we did is, this is the original photograph. All we did was take some of the artifacts out of it, like that little artifact right there, and this is what you wind up with. It is literally directly over the apparition site. Directly over the apparition site. If I were standing there, if I showed you this picture, and I just said, yeah, I snapped this a couple of weeks ago, how many of you would say, gee, that looks like a UFO? Yeah, exactly. So we think it's a smoking gun. The show that he was on, they put the kibosh on it. So now we've got, what does Fatima have to do with it? Why am I so not upset with Fatima, but why does this bother me? Is this supernatural manifesting now? This is from Fatima 2.
What happened at Fatima is now in the far distant past. Over 100 years ago, events occurred which are still the subject of debate today. However, there have been numerous apparition sites since 1917. This segment will explore more of a strange phenomenon that is occurring in modernity. We will present real footage of so-called apparitions and ask you to determine what it is you are looking at. Can we really ascertain what these indistinct images of light are? You be the judge.
Watch the sun. Nigeria. Camera pans away, then cams back. There's the pulsing. This is Zaytun, Egypt, 1968. What we really see is an amorphous blob of light. I don't know what that is. This is Ireland, 2017. Listen to the hysteria. Watch right here. Total hysteria. This is Conyers, Georgia, 1990. There's two people standing in the field, husband and wife. One looks up and sees a religious figure. The husband looks up and sees a UFO. How is that possible? This is India. And this went on for 2 weeks. And what really bothers me about this, there are 4 amorphous blobs of light. So you can say, oh, that's the Mary of the Bible and that's the baby Jesus. Wrong. They are 4 amorphous blobs of light. I have no idea what they are, and neither do you. And to put any type of a label on them is absurd. Muslims and Christians got together during this thing for 2 weeks. This apparition appeared just like that, right outside of Cairo. And they would all clap, and this thing was just like there. And people eat this stuff up. If someone comes to your house at 2:30 in the morning, do you let them in? Just because we see something like that, I don't know what I'm looking at. I'm not going to sit there and clap. I'm going to sit there and rebuke first and ask questions later. That's what I'm going to do, because I don't know what this thing is, whether you're malevolent or benevolent. I have no idea. And just because you may look a little like something, to me you're a freaking amorphous blob. The reason why I'm so pissed off at this is because it all stems back to a certain organization accepting the events at Fatima, so that's where we are here. They accepted what happened in 1917 as something. They dressed it up in religious clothes, so now when everybody sees this stuff, oh, it's from, wherever. Oh, it's from God. Is it really? We don't know where it's from. We don't know where it's from. Messengers of Deception? Didn't Jacques Vallée write a book about that? No. Let's continue. I'm probably going to go a little over. Is that okay? No! We want to eat! Oh, they're all clapping. Oh, go LA, go. No, I know you. Come on. So I'm gonna. This is Tucker Carlson. We all know it. Most of us have seen it. Let's skip to the good part.
Honestly, I wanted to fly it.
Sure you did.
They don't think the human body could handle that kind of force with that acceleration.
This was.
I believe, as do the other folks that were on the flight, that when we visually saw it, that it was something not from this world.
This was.
I believe, as do the other folks that were on the flight, that when we visually saw it, that it was something not from this world.
Something not from this world. Folks, that was disclosure. That was 2017. I truly believe that my phone would be ringing off the hook, my email box would be full, my computer would blow up, and that would be it. Flatline. No one did doodly squat. This is primetime television, and this is the question that no one's asked yet. How do you get an unknown guy like Commander David Fravor, with all due respect? He doesn't have a DVD. He doesn't have a book. He doesn't have a blog. This guy's a total unknown. Nobody knows who this guy is. Yet, he winds up on Tucker Carlson primetime and gets 6 minutes. How does that work? Who calls up whom and goes, yeah, we got this guy, we want him on. And why now? And this is the same thing that happened in December, where the whole Harry Reid thing, yeah, we've got a secret government fund that studies UFOs. What does that mean? Did they swap 1950 black and white photos of UFOs? I'll trade you the dish shape for the cigar shape. I mean, what do they do? How do you guys study them? Come on. Everything came out. Area 51 exists. Finally, they admit it exists. Whoa, we can all sleep better now. And I think it was a test to see what the American people would do. And guess what the American people did? They demanded to see the truth. No, they didn't. They just went back to their beer and stupid football games and Big Mac sandwiches. That's all they did. Nothing. Except for some of you. It was all flatlined. Everybody's asleep. Nobody cares. It's just and since then, Tucker Carlson, since then, about every 4 to 6 weeks, Nick Pope was, I don't know where he is, if he's in the room, but Nick was on, and I watched that interview, and it was great, but he's had other people come on. It begs the question, who made the call to get this on Tucker Carlson. And you can see that, we don't have time to get into it, but Tucker goes, this UFO used to be the stuff consigned to conspiracy theorists in tinfoil hats. I wear mine very proudly. It burned in the fire. I got it on the internet. I love my tinfoil hat. But look, everything that's weird can't go up against the Darwinian paradigm. The Darwinian paradigm is held sacrosanct in both academic community and the scientific community. If you're not a Darwinist and you're a biologist, good luck. So everyone believes in the scientific community, for the most part, that this whole thing just happened. As I said earlier, the whole deoxyribonucleic double helix of life, the spiral of life as I call it, the DNA molecular structure, could not have just fallen into place. So the neo-Darwinists are looking at the stars as they realize the complexities of the DNA code, which is the building block of all life on this planet, could not have originated on its own. Thus, many of the neo-Darwinists believe all life was seeded here by an advanced race of extraterrestrials. Of course, that is called panspermia. And what we see here is the acceptance that, okay, the deoxyribonucleic acid, the double helix, the DNA molecular structure, as Crick was a Vex man, the co-discoverer of the DNA, he realized that all the primordial slime in the world and the billions of years, it just isn't going to make this type of complex life. When you mate two hummingbirds, you don't get a humpback whale. When you mate two kangaroos, you don't get field mice. When you mate two penguins, you don't get whatever, human beings. Everything's created in according. Yeah, there's microevolution, things can happen, I get that. You can change the DNA a little bit, I get that. But penguins are still penguins. Last time I checked, no penguins making a telephone. I'm tired of living in Antarctica, I want some warmer climate. It doesn't happen. Why is that? As I said right at the outset, who are we, what are we, how did we get here, what is this? Nobody knows. Where is consciousness, where does it reside? What is language? How do we hear? How do we process language? So the neo-Darwinists are looking for the extraterrestrial. Because they are looking, that's why the movie Prometheus was created, and we all sat through it, because he goes out and looks for our creators. So we're being visited, and at some point they will show up. Do ancient prophetic texts warn what is manifesting? About the time of the end, a body of men will be raised up and will turn their attention to the prophecies and insist on their little interpretation in the midst of much clamor and opposition. Sir Isaac Newton. People will be terrified, this is the 2,000-year-old prophecy, people will be terrified at what they see coming upon the earth, for the powers of heavens will be shaken. Men's hearts failing them for fear and for looking after those things which are coming on the earth, for the powers of heaven shall be shaken. Even the elect would be deceived if that were possible. The dragon will come with all signs and lying wonders. So I realize that that's they're really being negative. My experience with ET has actually been really good. I was healed of cancer. They love me, really. I don't mind being abducted and implanted. It's actually sort of fun now. Okay, that's called the Stockholm Syndrome. We won't get into that. When ET comes, they will tell us, in my opinion, we seeded all life on this planet. We are your progenitors, your creators. We genetically manipulated early man. We started the world's civilizations. We started the world's religions. Now at this critical juncture in human history, we are back to usher mankind into a golden age. I've heard this for the last 40 years, ever since I was immersed in that world. I heard it in my teens. I heard it in my 20s. I heard it from my guru, my spirit guides back then, which were not the same spirit guide that I have now. So this is from the book of Revelation, written 2,000 years ago. And you have to ask yourself something, and I'm going somewhere with this, so we're almost done. He causes all, both small and great and rich, poor and free and slave, to receive a mark on their right hand or on their foreheads. And no one may buy or sell except one who has the mark, or the name of the beast. So here's the deal. This is written 2,000 years ago, okay? If I were to tell you just 100 years ago, that there's going to be a time coming you won't be able to buy, sell, or trade without this mark. You'd look at me and go, L.A., you were out of your mind. And I would have agreed. I'd be out of my mind. However, right here in my wallet, I have a little card that's got a chip in it right there. And I can take that chip from Timbuktu to Los Angeles to Peru to England, and I can insert it into a machine, and I can get currency. And it will, because everything is connected. Everything is connected. Everything is connected. Everything is connected. And right now, the connections are benevolent.
I can go and I can get money. I can pay my bills. I can do this. I can do that. Right now, it's benevolent on some level. Of course, our government would never spy on its own citizenry, right? God forbid. The NSA would never think of doing anything like that. Right now, it's benevolent. What happens if it turns? What happens if they come back and they say something like, hey, we created all life on this planet, and we have this little implant that we'd like to give you, which will extend your lifespan 300 years to 500 years, disease-free. Disease-free, it's yours. All you got to do is take the implant. It's a DNA upgrade. You'll run faster, you'll live longer, you'll feel better, you'll never get sick. How many people in this room, raise your hands, would take it? See, I told you. And this is what I'm afraid of, because many people will take it. Because it'll be couched in such a way that it will seem, look, I'm not making this stuff up. You guys can call me crazy. I don't care. Okay? All I'm doing is reporting what was written 2,000 years ago in an ancient prophetic text. That's all I'm doing. I'm not sounding religious. I'm not telling you to go do anything. I'm just telling you what was written 2,000 years ago and how it totally dovetails, in my opinion, to what we took out of Bill's leg before with Dr. Roger Lear. The second criteria, I think is the second one. Another angel, a third, followed him, saying with a loud voice, if anyone worships the beast in its image and receives a mark on his forehead, he will drink the wine, the Ancient of Days' wrath. And another criteria, again, this is from the book of Revelation. In those days, men will seek death and will not find it. They will desire to die, and death will flee from them. The question is the lifespan lengthened by the implant? And in my opinion, it is. Look, all I know is this, that whoever is doing this implant stuff has spent an enormous amount of energy and time and resources. And as Dr. Roger Lear says, there has been a steady progression from the first one that he took out in 1999 to patient 17, the last one. 99, you could cut it with a razor knife. Number 16, which is the second to last one before we took out, you could only open that thing up with a laser beam. Something is going on, and guess what? Yeah, it's a tracking device, but it's so much more. We posit that this thing actually is changing the host DNA. And I've talked to Bill about this, and he told me that after the thing was removed, he gained weight and he got sick for the first time, and he knows how long. Now, I'm not saying I can't prove that that implant is in fact the mark of the beast, but that's where I'm putting my honest money right now. That's where I think it is. Because there's a steady progression of it. It dovetails in with this ancient prophetic stuff. We've seen them, we've cut them open. And what happens when you take this thing? If it changes your DNA, and this is the question each person has to ask himself, does it alter your humanity? Does it turn you into something else? In other words, the hybrid woman that was running in the park, what my friend saw, she appeared to be human, but she wasn't. She turned and growled at him. In other words, the couple that saw those two weird kids, and when she looked back and the neck stretched like that. The woman with the dark glasses, when she went to mount him and kiss him, whatever, the eyes shape-shifted when he pushed her away. What's really going on here? What's really happening? And all this is surreptitious. It's always done under the cover of darkness. It's always cloaked. It's always hidden. It's always obfuscated. So I would just say to you, and I'll leave you with this. I think I'm actually finishing on time. 2 minutes left. Well, I know, go figure, right? The medical examination to which abductees are said to be subjected. This is Dr. Jacques Vallée. In some ways, I have 2 minutes so I can expound a little bit. In some ways, he can be called the father of ufology. Is that a fair statement? Okay? We all respect what he says. Now, I realize that he's not talking about this stuff so much anymore. I understand that. But this is what he says. The medical examination to which abductees are said to be subjected, often accompanied by sadistic sexual manipulation, is reminiscent of the medieval tales of encounters with the demonic. It makes no sense in a sophisticated or technical framework, any intelligent being equipped with the scientific marvels that UFOs possess would be in a position to achieve any of these alleged scientific objectives in a shorter time and with much fewer risks. What was written will come to pass. What was foretold is unfolding. I just want to thank you for bearing with me for 2 hours. It's been a great audience. I'll be downstairs at my table.
Thank you, guys.